Part 1, Death of Glencoe. The night remembers everything. The snow came sideways that night, thin, needle-sharp, and relentless. Sheriff Evan McRae guided his patrol truck along the narrow A80 to the single road slicing through Glen Morag, where mountains stood like sleeping beasts under a swollen moon. The headlights caught sheets of snow whipping across the asphalt, ghosts of past winters dancing over black ice. Inside the cab, the radio hissed with static and Gaelic folk murmurs from some faraway station. Evan drummed a gloved hand against the steering wheel, the leather creaking like old wood. It was near midnight, and the valley felt empty, too empty even for the Highlands. He passed the rusted sign that said, "Welcome to Glen Morag, Pop. 417 EST 1692. The 2 had been scratched out and replaced with a dripping dot. No one claimed to have done it. Even exhaled fog against the windshield. He'd been sheriff here for 6 years, long enough to know the valley's strange rhythms, the way fog gathered like breath before storms, the way the loch never froze even in February, the way some families kept stones with names carved on them in their windowsills to keep the banshee out. He didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. The radio cracked. "Unit 1, come in." "Evan, you copy?" It was Fiona MacLeod, his deputy. Her voice trembled through interference. "Copy, Fiona." "What's the call?" "Got a sighting near Loch Chiaran. Hiker found something hanging from the pine by the water. You'd better see it yourself." Her silence stretched long enough for him to hear the wind scream outside. Then softly, "It's Callum Fraser." Evan straightened, knuckles whitening on the wheel. Callum, the mechanic's son, 23, recently engaged. The boy who used to fix his truck for free. He turned off the main road, tires crunching on frozen dirt. The headlights cut through mist so thick it looked alive. The pine tree came into view first, a massive, gnarled sentinel that locals called the hanging pine. Beyond it, Loch Chiaran glimmered black as tar, the water perfectly still despite the wind. Fiona stood by her Land Rover, face pale in the red-blue flicker of emergency lights. She didn't speak. She just pointed upward. Callum Fraser swung gently from a rope tied to the lowest branch, the snow drifting around him like falling ash. His eyes were gone, to hollow pits staring at nothing. His mouth was jammed full of something red and coarse. Evan climbed up, his boots sinking into the frozen loam. He took off his gloves and, with a shuddering breath, reached into the boy's mouth. What came out was a handful of deer fur, wet, matted, and crimson. Fiona gagged behind him. "There's something on his chest," she whispered. Evan brushed the snow off the body. On the dead man's skin, carved deep and jagged with something sharp, were the words, "Death of Glencoe 330 winters unpaid." The letters had been etched like ritual, precise and angry. "Jesus Christ," Evan muttered. "What the hell does that mean?" Fiona looked at him, eyes wide. "Glencoe, that's... I know what Glencoe is." His voice was flat. Every Highlander did. The 1692 massacre, when the Campbells slaughtered their MacDonald hosts in their sleep. A sin soaked into Scottish soil so deep even the snow remembered it. But 330 winters ago? Who carves something like that today? They taped off the scene, took photos, collected what little evidence the blizzard would allow. When the coroner's van finally took Callum's body away, Evan lingered. He stared at the dark water of Loch Chiaran, where the reflection of the pine twisted with every gust. For a moment, he thought he saw a woman standing just beneath the surface, long black hair floating, head bowed, hands wringing a length of white cloth in the water. He blinked, and she was gone. Only the ripples remained. At 3 a.m., back in his office, a squat stone building that used to be a church, even replayed the traffic camera footage from the A82 near Callum's route home. The timestamp, 23:54. Callum's blue Ford appears, headlights slicing fog. The car slows. Stops. Then, on the edge of the frame, movement. A figure in white walks from the woods, barefoot, hair dragging behind like a shadow. Callum gets out, still smiling as if under a spell. The woman lifts her head slightly. Her face is blurred by fog, yet even feels his stomach twist. There's something wrong with the shape of it. Callum takes her hand and walks into the mist. Then the feed dies. Even leaned back, staring at the frozen frame. Who the hell are you? By dawn, the storm had buried Glenmorag in silence. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, the valley still sleeping. Even sat at his desk, the file on Callum open before him. He found a pattern no one wanted to see. 6 men, Callum Fraser, Rory Grant, Duncan Shaw, Hamish Munro, Lucan Ross, and Ian "Innie" MacDonald. All between 18 and 25. All local born. All had gone missing or died in the last 8 weeks. Only Callum's body had been found. He rubbed his temples. The locals were already whispering, the Bean Nighe Glencoe, the washerwoman of death, had returned to cleanse the sins of the clans. Superstitious nonsense, he told himself. Yet when he opened Callum's phone from evidence, something made his skin crawl. The last call received, 007 AM, from an unlisted number. No caller ID. He hit play. From the speaker came a soft Gaelic lullaby, sung by a woman's voice, melancholy, haunting, older than language. The melody wrapped around him like cold breath. He couldn't understand the words, but he could feel them: grief, longing, vengeance. The song stopped abruptly. Then a whisper, close enough to sound like it came from behind him. "She's still washing." Even spun around. The office was empty. By midday, Fiona returned from interviewing Callum's mother. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She said Callum kept hearing, singing, Fiona murmured. He told her it was a woman by the loch. Said she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Even stared at the frost creeping along the window pane. Did she mention when that started? The night after New Year's Eve. He did the math in his head. Exactly 8 weeks ago. The same night the first boy vanished. The air in the room thickened. Fiona whispered, "You don't think it's connected to?" "No," he cut her off sharply. "It's someone sick, twisted. Playing on old legends. That's all." But even as he said it, his voice sounded hollow. That evening, he drove back out to Loch Chiaran. The sky had turned the color of lead, the snow had stopped, leaving the world eerily still. He parked near the tree, his breath fogging in the cold. He wanted to see it again, to prove to himself that what he saw before was just exhaustion, not something real. The loch was silent. Then, faintly, a ripple appeared. Another. From the water, a hand emerged, thin, pale, dripping red. It grasped the shore, followed by a woman dragging herself from the depths. Her dress was white linen, soaked with blood. Her hair hung like wet seaweed, long enough to brush the ground. One foot was human, the other a split red hoof. She began to wring the bloody garment in her hands, humming that same Gaelic lullaby. Even froze. The sound wasn't coming from the air, it was inside his skull, vibrating behind his eyes. Her head turned, slowly. Half her face was exquisite, the kind that belonged to a saint in stained glass. The other half was a rotted skull, teeth grinning beneath torn flesh. Her voice came out like a choir of the drowned. 330 winters of silence. The blood still stains the snow. The debt must be paid. Even stumbled backward, reaching for his gun. But when he blinked, she was gone. Only the water moved, rippling like something laughing beneath. Back in his truck, shaking, even called Fiona. No answer. He tried again, his breath fogging the windshield. Then his phone lit up. Unknown number. 007. He hesitated and answered. A woman's voice whispered through static. "You saw me, Sheriff. Now you owe me too." The line went dead. Outside, in the reflection of his side mirror, Something white moved across the frozen loch, slowly, gracefully, like a bride walking down an endless aisle. Part 2: The bloody pattern. The valley keeps its own calendar of grief. The next morning broke without color. The sky was a bruised grey, the kind that made even snow look tired. Sheriff Evan McRae hadn't slept. He sat by the station window with a mug that had long gone cold, staring at the fog lifting from the loch. Somewhere beyond it, the hanging pine creaked in the wind, a metronome for dread. Deputy Fiona MacLeod arrived pale and hollow-eyed. "The parish church is full," she murmured. Half the valley came to light candles for Callum. Other half came to watch, Evan replied. "People always want to see if the curse looks back." The burning. That afternoon smoke rose from the north slope, dark, frantic, wrong. By the time they reached the croft of old Sumas Campbell, the thatch roof was a living torch. Men from the village stood in a circle, faces cracked by fear and frost. Someone had painted words on Sumas's door in animal blood. "Witch! Send her back to Glencoe." Fiona shouted for them to move aside. "He's still in there." Evan kicked the door in, heat punched his lungs. Sumas lay near the hearth, beard singed, eyes rolling white. They dragged him out as the roof caved in, sending a flurry of sparks into the snow. The old man coughed smoke and croaked in Gaelic, "Chaghab I lees and vist tu lead, she has taken to the land. She no longer walks the water, she walks the earth." The crowd stared, ashamed and terrified. Evan rounded on them. "You nearly burned a man alive because you're scared of a story." No one answered. Somewhere a child began to sing the same lullaby from Callum's phone, soft and off-key. Its echo crawled through the frozen air until even the flames seemed to quiet. The second body. At dusk, a shepherd found something by the Glencoe Memorial, a low stone cairn crusted with snow and gilt. When Evan arrived, Fiona was already there, her hands shaking as she held a torch. Rory Grant hung from the iron fence like a skinned deer. His face, or what was left, had been peeled away and stretched across barbed wire, stiff as parchment. Beneath it, carved into the stone, the same message. "Debt of Glencoe 329 winters unpaid." Fiona whispered a prayer in Gaelic, the old words trembling, "Gabtroker oyan, athayana." Evan stared at the body until snow gathered on his shoulders. "He's counting backwards," he said. "One winter each life." They covered the remains with a tarpaulin. The fabric twitched in the wind like something breathing underneath. The visitor. That night Evan sat beside Sumas's hospital bed. The old man's skin was blistered, his eyes clouded but still bright with a feral knowing. "She was seen," Sumas rasped. "That means the line between then and now is thin again." "I saw something," Evan admitted quietly. "By the loch." She called herself a debt. Sumas smiled without teeth. "A Bean Nighe na Glencoe. The washer of the shroud. She does not kill, she only cleans what death has chosen. But when the clan blood is unatoned, she chooses for it." He reached for Evan's wrist, the grip surprisingly strong. "Tell me, Sheriff, your mother's name." "Moira Campbell." The old man's eyes filled with tears. Then the circle is almost closed. Evan pulled free, unsettled. "What circle?" "The one drawn in blood between MacDonald and Campbell." "You carry both. The curse can end only where it began, at Glencoe, by a neck willingly given." Evan stood, shaking his head. "I'm not feeding your legends, Sumas." The old man whispered after him, "Then the legends will feed on you." The arrival. By morning, the news had reached Edinburgh. A convoy of black SUVs climbed into Glen Morag, their wheels spraying mud and salt. Out stepped Detective Inspector Richard Harlow, sharp-suited, mid-40s, eyes that looked allergic to snow. He offered a tight smile. "Sheriff McRae, we are assuming control of your investigation." Evan didn't move from the doorway. "You are welcome to it, Inspector. Just don't expect the valley to talk to you." Harlow's gaze swept over the Churchton station, the crude cross on the wall, the racks of antlers above the door. They'll talk to science and evidence, not folklore. Then you'll hear nothing but wind, Fiona muttered. The night of echoes. That evening Harlow insisted on examining the first scene himself. They hiked to the hanging pine under moonlight. The rope was gone, but the branch still sagged as if remembering the weight. Evan's torch flickered. The snow around the base of the tree had melted in a perfect circle, as though from unseen heat. Thermal activity? Harlow asked. In February? Fiona replied. On frozen soil? Harlow crouched, touching the ground. His fingers came away wet and red. Not water, blood, thin and warm as if freshly spilled. The inspector swallowed hard. Animal, perhaps. Evan's voice was low. Animals don't carve Gaelic curses. They turned toward the loch. Across the black water, something pale moved along the bank, slow, rhythmic. It bent and rose again, like someone washing linen. The sound reached them faintly, the slap of wet cloth on stone. Who's that? Harlow called, stepping forward. The figure stopped. The song stopped. When the torchlight caught her, she was gone. Only ripples moved, circling outward as if the loch itself were breathing. The third loss. 2 days later, Duncan Shaw was found in his truck at the quarry, headlights still burning through the fog. The inside of the windshield was fogged with breath, but Duncan had no lungs left to breathe with. His chest had caved inward, ribs folded like brittle twigs. On the passenger seat lay a bundle of white fabric, wet, heavy. Fiona unwrapped it slowly. It was an old-style funeral shroud, stitched from linen and animal sinew. Across its hem, in dried blood, for the one who owes. Evan turned away and retched into the snow. Harlow watched, pale but defiant. A serial ritualist, he said, too quickly. Patterned killings with historical fixation. Evan wiped his mouth. Or something older than both of us keeping count. Whispers in the wind. That night, Glencoe fell into hysteria. Men nailed heather crosses to doors, women poured milk at the thresholds to appease spirits. The minister spoke of repentance, the drunks spoke of bloodlines. Evan heard both and trusted neither. He found Fiona sitting alone on the bridge, her breath silver in the cold. She's not after strangers, Fiona said quietly. It's a men, Evan. The ones born here. Like she's picking the valley clean of its sons. Evan leaned on the railing. If that's true, I'll be next in line. They stood in silence. Far below, the river moved like ink, and somewhere upriver came that lullaby again, faint, sorrowful, threading through the mist. The reckoning begins. At dawn, Harlow gathered the locals in the pub that served as the only hall large enough. He pinned photographs on the wall, faces of the missing, the carved messages, maps of the valley. 6 victims, he said. Each disappearance within a 7-day cycle. Someone is recreating a massacre calendar. The next interval lands on the 13th of February, 2 nights from now. The crowd murmured. An old woman whispered, "The night o' Glencoe." Evan stepped forward. That's the anniversary of the slaughter. 330 years exactly. Harlow scoffed. Coincidence. Sumas Campbellsners wheeled him in, half-conscious but lucid enough to rasp, not coincidence, reckoning. The room fell silent. His blistered hand rose, pointing at Evan. You carry both sins. One to spill, one to cleanse. The washer waits. Evan felt every eye in the room turn toward him. For the first time he saw what Fiona had seen since the start, the valley already choosing him. He left before anyone could speak. Outside, the snow had begun again, soft and endless, falling over the footprints of the dead. From the distance came the sound of the loch shifting, as if something beneath the ice were waking. The old men later swore they heard words in the wine that night. One more winter unpaid. Part 3. The Hanged Sheriff. Every valley buries its truth in snow. The 13th of February arrived like a bruise that would not fade. Dawn came late, the light a dull pewter. By noon, word had spread through Glen Morag, the Bean Nighe would claim her due tonight. No one said the words aloud, but the valley moved as one creature sensing its own death. Families locked their doors, yet candles burned in every window. Old songs were sung under breath, half prayers, half apologies. On the hill above the village, smoke rose from chimneys in thin, fearful ribbons. Sheriff Evan MacRae watched from his porch, his badge dull against the wool of his coat. In his pocket lay a scrap of linen cut from the shroud found in Duncanshaw's truck. It had stiffened, as if waiting. Fiona arrived wrapped in her father's tartan. "They're gathering at the mass grave," she said. "Even Harlow. They want you there." Even nodded. He had known this morning would come the moment he'd seen the words carved into Callum's chest. Death of Glencoe. The tally would end only where it began. The pilgrimage. Snow began to fall at dusk, silent as ash. The procession wound through the glen, hundreds of villagers walking behind torches, their faces hollowed by windlight. Seumas Campbell was wheeled at the front, eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. The road led to the old cairn of Glencoe, a hollow carved into the earth where, legend said, the betrayed MacDonalds had been buried upright in the frozen soil. Harlow trudged beside Evan, the city man's coat slick with melting snow. "This is madness," he hissed. "You can't feed them superstition." Evan's breath came white in the dark. "You don't feed superstition, Inspector. You starve it too long, it comes to feed on you." The detective had no answer. The valley did not belong to logic tonight. The gathering at the cairn. The cairn lay open under a slate-black sky, the torches glow painting the snow rust orange. Wind poured down from the peaks, carrying voices that might have been only the moan of air, or something older. The villagers formed a ring around the hollow. Their songs rose and fell in Gaelic cadence, the words older than their fear. Seumas raised a trembling hand. "She comes when the balance breaks," he said, his voice barely more than wind. "One of mixed blood must stand where the first blood fell." Evan stepped forward. The crowd parted as if pushed by an invisible tide. He felt every eye upon him, the MacDonalds who saw him as Campbell, the Campbells who saw him as MacDonald. Both right. Both wrong. Fiona caught his arm. "You don't have to do this." "I think I already did," he murmured. The lament. The wind stopped. Snowflakes hung in the air as if suspended by unseen strings. Then a sound rose from the loch below, the slow rhythm of water against stone, like cloth being washed. From the mist, she came. The Bean Nighe Glencoe glided forward, pale feet leaving no print upon the snow. Her hair streamed behind her in ribbons of ink, her gown shone wet, neither blood nor water but something between. One eye gleamed with sorrow, the other was an empty hollow. The crowd fell to their knees. Even Harlow dropped his torch. Evan stood alone before her. His voice was steady. "You've taken 6. Let it end." Her words were the hiss of many throats. 6 to remind. 1 to repay. The son of both clans, only he can close the wound. Evan drew the scrap of linen from his pocket. "Then take what's owed." The Bean Nighe looked at him for a long moment, her expression neither cruel nor kind. She lifted the wet cloth in her hands, the same shroud she had been washing through centuries, and draped it across his shoulders. The cold went through bone and thought alike. The wind rose again, carrying the echo of the massacre, muskets, screams, doors splintering, snow turning black. Evan saw it all at once, the betrayal in candlelight, the blood freezing midair, the women keening by the frozen loch. And through it all, the washerwoman, eternal, unweeping. The offering. Evan climbed the cairn's edge. The villagers cried out, but no one moved to stop him. He turned to face them, voice carrying over the storm. 330 winters, he said. We forgot their names. We built houses on their graves. Tonight the Glen remembers. He closed his eyes and spread his arms. The shroud fluttered like a banner of surrender. The Bean Nighe sang. The note was low, mournful, a river finding the sea. Snow swirled upward instead of down, wrapping even in white silence. For an instant the world held its breath. Then the rope that had once hung Callum swung empty on the pine above the loch, and a thunder like breaking ice rolled through the valley. When the storm cleared, Even stood at the cairn's center, alive but changed, eyes dark with something seen too deeply. The shroud lay at his feet, now clean, its stains washed away. The silence after. The torches guttered. One by one, people began to weep, not in fear but in release. Fiona approached, tears freezing on her lashes. "She's gone," she whispered. From the loch came only the sound of water settling, like breath finally exhaled. Sumas Campbell bowed his head. The washer has finished her work. Harlow stared, lost, his rational world shattered by what he could not name. "What did he give her?" he asked. Fiona looked toward the cairn. Himself. But not his life, his peace. Epilogue. Weeks passed. The snow melted, revealing new grass over the graves. No more disappearances. The valley returned to its routines, though no one spoke of that night directly. At the pub they toasted quietly, never saying what for. Even remained sheriff. A faint mark encircled his throat, no rope, yet something unseen had pressed there once. Around his neck he wore a small charm carved from the hanging pine, a ring of wood darkened by age.